Folks, Drew here again with the penultimate video update for this Kickstarter. Can I first say just a huge thanks to everybody who's been with me on this journey. If you've only just joined, welcome. If you've been here right from pretty much day one, then again, huge thanks for your support throughout all this. It's been quite a roller coaster, I think you'd probably agree. When I set out this back in, it seems like a lifetime ago actually, but it's just mid-November really. I really thought it was going to be quite an arse to get £4,500 just for the initial stretch license. To be way past that at the kind of £6,000 level now is astonishing, and it's all down to you guys for putting your faith in me. I really appreciate that. It's hugely exciting for me. I really can't wait to get started on this book. I've got so many ideas kind of bubbling around that I want to get on with, but I do need to get a little bit of that stuff kind of locked and loaded for the plot. But that's all stuff to do. But again, huge thanks for everything that everybody's added there. Some enormous pledges in some cases, but yeah, whether those are big or small, I'm hugely grateful for them, and brilliant to have you along for the ride. So where are we? 5 days, £6,000 ready to go. I've still got some stretch goals I'd like to aim for. Those printed copies of the books. Actually, to make a paperback is hugely satisfying. It's all very well having an ebook, and I'm sure everyone will enjoy reading the story on the Kindles, Nooks and all the other e-reading devices, but it is nice, I think particularly if you're slightly older, which many of us are, to have that physical book. So that's something I would really love to be able to do. Right now we're at that print on demand stage, but it would be very nice to be able to get a printed copy into your hands. So stretch goals, still got 5 days to go, still a possibility of doing that. If you can either up your pledge or get the word out to get a few more folks on board to help us do that, that would be superb. So you can see probably a few images flicking around behind me. I do use a lot of imagery when I'm writing. You may think, well, why are you doing that? I find it helps me to concentrate on the characters and get inspired by some of the scenes. Helps the imagination kind of flow. Anything that's like that is good, obviously, for a writer to kind of get motivated, get into the scene. Nice and easy to lose yourself in a good picture. So I'm lucky I've got a few opportunities to get hold of some interesting imagery. Got some planetarium software, as you can see on the PC that's running there, which allows me to voyage amongst the stars and do various other bits and pieces as well, which is useful for getting the kind of creative juices flowing. So you've seen some of those bits of artwork on there that I'm planning to use that inspire some of my character generation, that kind of stuff. Where else do I get the stuff from? Well, it won't be any surprise to you that most good writers do an awful lot of reading. I thought I'd share with you some of my favourite books. I'm sure some of these will probably resonate with you and some of their authors. Very obvious one here. The first fantasy book I ever read, I'm sure probably one of the ones early on for you, J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit. Currently obviously out in the cinema near you, haven't seen that yet, but probably will never capture the magic in a film the same way this particular book did capture me the first time around. I remember reading this at the age of about 10, and it was just utterly transported into this world of trolls and goblins and wizards and high adventure amongst the mountains and Mirkwood and dragons and so on and so forth. I'm sure you know the story, but that really nails it for me, that storytelling epicness that Tolkien managed to get into what was actually arguably just a children's book. Just transports you to another world, and you have a complete sense of immersion, you have a complete sense of transportation to this completely believable Middle Earth, as it obviously was in Tolkien's book. Absolutely fantastic, and that's the kind of effect I hope to achieve in my stories. I want you to, as you read it, to just be somewhere else. You know, whether you're in a flat somewhere, you're sitting on a park bench, whether you're in a room, whether you're on a train to work, wherever you happen to be. I want to take you out of that situation, put you into my world in such a way that you just are there and you're not even conscious, if possible, of the kind of real world that you're actually travelling through. I want to transport you to another world, another time, another place. That's kind of the effect that I want to have. So that's the Tolkien-y bit, if you like. Another great author for me, read very early on, Arthur C. Clarke. This is still my favourite one, 2001. It's quite a tech-heavy story in some ways. Hard sci-fi. I have written a few bits and pieces of, and I quite like it. If you want to be absolutely scientifically accurate and treat your readers with that kind of respect, that they know the technology, they know the limitations of the technology, and you expound upon that in a very structured and kind of logical way. I'm not going to be entirely bound by that with Elite Reclamation, because Elite's universe is quite fantastical in nature. You've got kind of hyperdrives, and you've got laser technology that arguably wouldn't exist in a properly sci-fi world. I've kind of already considered how far I can push that level of realism given what we already know about the Elite universe, because clearly some bits of it are slightly implausible and would never really happen in a hard sci-fi kind of story. So you've got to be a bit careful there while still staying true to the sci-fi ethos. But what I took out of Arthur C. Clarke's book is that attention to detail. When he talks about, in 2001 particularly, there's one bit near the end where the space pod, after travelling through the kind of time gate, ends up at a star, and he makes a comment about the sunspots on this remote star that's billions of light years away across the galaxy. And he didn't have to do that. He just put in this little detail. You just think, yeah, he's thought about that. He's added that little extra detail because he cares about the realism of the story to people who are astronomically minded, who really know their sci-fi, who really want to kind of get into some of those details. The fact that the spaceship in 2001 didn't kind of keep blasting along with its engines running, because that's not realistic in absolutely hard sci-fi. The engines were fired at the beginning, the ship was coasting through space, and it had to fire retro rockets when it got there to slow down. That's all kind of good, solid sci-fi. The same thing with the centrifuge that you probably remember from the story as well. There's no anti-gravity in this book because anti-gravity isn't really realistic at a hard sci-fi level. So there's some of that attention to detail stuff that I really like about Arthur C. Clarke. He's a good lad. The other one, sadly not with us, huge inspiration for me, both as a writer and actually as an amateur astronomer, is Carl Sagan. This is his book Contact, and probably, to be honest, one of my favourite books. Absolutely solid science fiction in the sense that it's completely and utterly plausible all the way through, perhaps apart from the ending, which obviously goes off into the realms of fantasy. But everything up to that point is written with a huge amount of attention to detail. Carl was just a brilliant communicator of all things scientific, all things astronomy. I went to see him actually at Christmas lectures in 1977 as a young boy, and that, I can probably say, is when my own interest in space science and the nature of the universe kind of just took off. And I've never looked back since, and in sort of 35 years. Sadly not with us anymore, but the legacy of his work, I'm sure you've probably seen the Cosmos program, and you may have seen some of the other stuff that he's written. If you haven't, find him out. He's a great writer, and there's some really good stuff there. So again, hard sci-fi, but with a fantastical element that kind of transports you onto other worlds and other places. So there's some good bits and pieces in there as well, and some nice dialogue in that one particularly. For sense of adventure, you can't beat classic stuff. Sure, maybe you've all seen stuff by Jules Verne or H.G. Wells. This is Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, one of the early hardback versions actually. It's quite valuable, this one. Quite glad to have it in my collection. And these guys, clearly they didn't have the knowledge that we have nowadays about how space works, so some of their inventions would, by modern standards, look a little bit odd, but fantastic adventure. If you've never read Journey to the Centre of the Earth, any of those kind of classics, you are missing out. Make sure you go and find them, dig them out, read them. They are absolutely brilliant. I'll put H.G. Wells in there as well, with things like The Time Machine and War of the Worlds. Utterly seminal kind of sci-fi stuff that you really need to have. So an element of that kind of driving adventure with the use of some technology in there is another thing that I want to kind of bring into Elite Reclamation. Slightly different stuff now. I haven't got a book of this one. It's up in the attic somewhere. I have to rotate my books. I've got far too many of them, and I haven't got enough bookshelves in the house. One of my favourite fantasy stroke sci-fi authors, and actually she would be very much put herself in the sci-fi camp rather than the fantasy camp by, with a rather roguish wink of the eye, is Anne McCaffrey. Some of you may know her from her Dragon series, Dragonflight, Dragon Song, so on and so forth. It's set in what appears to be a rather fantastical planet with flying dragons that can kind of teleport themselves in and out of places. But what Anne McCaffrey had was a fantastic attention to detail of character. Her characters literally just jumped off the page, and they're people you thought, good grief, I could almost recognise them if they walked down the street. That's how well they were described, and their mannerisms, the way they would talk and communicate with each other. It was, you know, they really were some of the most lifelike characters I think I've ever come across. So she is a big inspiration in terms of how I put my characters together, how they act, how they're very, very distinct from each other. What I really hate in films or books is characters where you think, is that Mary, or is that Sue, or is that Jane, or is that Tom, or is that Freddie? You know, I can't really tell them apart because there's not enough distinction between them. And that's not just around, you know, one's got brown hair, one's got blue eyes, and one's got long hair, and one's got short hair, that kind of stuff. It's very much about how they act and how they react to situations and what they do and what they think. You should be able to get a sense of how a person's going to react and be going, no, 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 don't put him in that situation because you know it's going to go wrong. And that tension as a reader is absolutely great, because you want to turn the page then to find out what happens next. Because you just think, no, no, this is going to be a disaster if those two people meet, or yeah, those two people don't meet, it's going to be a disaster because they really need to meet. And it's that kind of stuff that drives the story forward. Anne McCaffrey was a master, or mistress, no I can't say mistress, can I? A master at that kind of stuff. She was absolutely fantastic, and that again, character-wise, desperately important to have a page-turning novel. That's what I want to get to for Elite Reclamation. Characters that you think, that's got to happen, or no, 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 don't make that happen, please, because that's going to be a disaster. And that tension, that kind of oh my gosh moment as you turn the page, and then suddenly you realise you're at the end of a chapter. No, no, he's not going to resolve it until the next chapter. Come on, Drew. It's that sort of stuff I really want to kind of give you a bit of a hard time actually over. You know, writers can be pretty cruel, kind of stringing you along, and we make no apology for that. I'm sorry, that's just the way things are. So I'll have a lot of fun with that. My final book is actually my favourite book ever, written by a lady long gone now, and many of you will know this one. This is Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. This is not sci-fi, this is not fantasy either in the sort of classic sense. It's a contemporary story set quite a long time ago. There is no other word for this book than it is a masterpiece. If I was going to read only one book for the rest of my life, this would be it. This would be it. Rebecca. So impressed by this, I named my heroine in the Elite Saga after the eponymous name in this book, although the lady in this book, Rebecca, doesn't actually appear in this story, which is kind of a bit weird. She's actually kind of the ghost that haunts the characters in the story. But it is superb in the tension that it builds, in the characters that it describes. There's a lady in here, and she is just terrifying. You just would not want to meet her because she's just absolutely ghastly. You know, the hero, if you like, is a young girl who's completely and utterly naive about the situation that's going on. She's married to this older guy who has some sort of most bizarre past, and this whole thing is kind of woven together in a fantastic way, which kind of just gets you. You know, you just can't help but keep turning the pages, and you just read it in one sitting. It's that kind of book. It's one of those books that keeps you awake at night, doesn't let you sleep, and drives you through. It's like you're chained to the book, and you can't get away from it. It is a fantastic story. So if you haven't read Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, get a hold of a copy. It should be quite easy to find. It is absolutely superb. Really worth getting. Last book. A little bit of a self-promotion, I hope you don't mind that. This is Torn. This is a book I wrote back, I started it back in 2003. It kind of took me 6 years to get it to a kind of first draft state, and a couple more years to get it edited and published. I published it last year, 2011. That's a contemporary novel that I wrote, trying to pull all these kind of things together in my own mind. As a kind of scientist kind of oriented sort of chap, science makes a lot of sense to me, but I had quite a religious upbringing as a child, and of course those two things come together. And, 6 days for the creation of the universe? Well, maybe not. Was it 4.9 billion years? How do these things kind of align and fix together? I've never quite satisfied myself or worked the answer to that one out, but I used Torn to kind of explore those kind of ideas. So I came up with some characters. I came up with one young lady who's very much a staunch kind of Christian, evangelical, New Age kind of girl, who's absolutely born again Christian, absolutely convinced of it to a point of sort of zealous attention to it, won't consider anything else. And then on the flip side, you've got this kind of rather depressed scientist who's lost his wife, had quite a lot of tragedy in his life, and all these kind of bits and pieces. And you reread them together, see what happens, and it's just this amazing kind of explosion of stuff. So that is again the kind of stuff that I'm kind of aiming for. For me, and you can compare and contrast what I do with the other Kickstarters. There's a lot of other books out there now, and they're all kind of vying for your money. My pitch is conflict, is emotions, is characters that kind of just want to jump off the page, grab you around the throat. A plot and situations that make you just say, I've got to turn one more page, I've got to read one more chapter because I've just got to know. That is my, if you like, sales pitch. That's the nub that I want to hit. That's what I always aim for in my books. So if that kind of resonates with you, please do join me on this. We're a long way down the road. I'd really like to hit those stretch goals, because that's a big thing for me in getting a paperback out there. It's so much more satisfying to read for many of us. The ebook, it's all guaranteed. The editing, the cover design, that stuff's all in the bag, which is great. But it'd be nice if we could just push that a little bit further. So if you can, keep going for it. Please spread the news. Anything else I can do, obviously just find me questions on the Kickstarter, you know how to get me. Again, thanks for all the support to date. It's been absolutely fantastic. Can't wait to get started. Just a few more days to go. It looks like Elite Dangerous is going to make it across the line as well. Although that's a tiny bit touch and go. This entire Kickstarter process actually be worthy of a novel in its own right. I wish I'd taken some kind of copious notes all the way through, but for obvious reasons I was a little bit too busy. But it's been quite a ride, and I think the next few days are unlikely to let up as well. But again, thank you very much. I do really appreciate the vote of confidence that I've been given. I've been amazed at some of the comments and some of the support I've had, and just generally the number of people who've responded to what I've done. So thank you for this opportunity. I will not let you down. This will be a fantastic book, and I hope you've enjoyed this little kind of segue into some of the stuff that's inspired me over the years as well. So see you soon. There'll be one more video update just before we finish towards the end of next week. Please wish me luck, and I shall see you at the end. Take care now. Bye.